Eoin Morgan is looking to become the first captain to hold both white ball World Cup trophies at the same time. I spoke to him yesterday, in fact, and I asked him what he thinks has changed since he led England into the final of this competition 5.5 years ago.
I actually think the considerable amount has changed. It does feel like an age ago since we played back in 2016. I suppose on the cusp of a new journey, having culminated a new group of players together post 2015 50 over World Cup in Australia and New Zealand, and that being the premise of the cornerstone of our motivation moving forward, being 1 year into the cycle and I suppose being an afterthought going into that T20 World Cup and progressing like we did was a huge confidence booster, not only with the way that we played, but also the group of players that we backed going into that tournament to go and play a free-spirited, carefree, aggressive brand of cricket. And I suppose it was an early acknowledgement in our journey as a team and as a squad as to, I suppose, the fact that we were going in the right direction. I suppose since then, I suppose we've been favourites in every world tournament that we've played in. 2017 Champions Trophy at home, 2019 50 over World Cup at home, we were favourites. It almost feels a little bit different not being favourites going into this one. Obviously a new challenge. India are favourites, rightly so. And it's exciting. I've played in a lot of T20 World Cups now, having been part of a side that won back in 2010, being part of a couple of World Cups where we've been bundled out in the group stages and then making the final in 2016. And, an extraordinary, one-off extraordinary sporting event that, held us away from the cup. So I've sort of seen most of the things that go on at T20 World Cups, but I know I'd rather go into a tournament considerable, either second favourites or favourites. So I'm excited about this year.
Do you look back at that final over in 2016 and still use that to motivate the team or to refer back to in any way, or do you feel like you've all moved on too far from that point?
No, I think certainly personally a lot of my motivation is driven by 2013 Champions Trophy final, 2015 50 over World Cup, which we lost in the final in 2013 at home against India in a, I suppose, similar instance, an unlosable situation in a run chase. And 2015 50 over World Cup in Australia and New Zealand was an absolute disaster. So a lot of my personal motivation is derived from those two experiences. But, probably half of the team within the group in 2016, that was their first time experiencing something that they thought everything was going well. We prepped really well for the World Cup. The first game we lost against the West Indies, and at the halfway stage of our second group game, we're staring down the barrel of leaving the World Cup in the group stage, chasing down 230 against South Africa. So having chased that down and progressed, confidence was building. We played a really good semi-final against New Zealand in Delhi, and then going into the final itself, having posted an under par score, Joe Root opening the bowling, taking 2 wickets in his first over, we're back in the driving seat. So experiencing the highs and lows of the whole of that World Cup right up until the last over. And then Carlos hitting those 4 remarkable sixes in an unbelievable turn of events. Experiencing that for some of our guys probably is still motivation.
And the experience that it's given you as a captain as well. I mean, all of those finals that you mentioned in 2019 as well. And you talk to the players that have played with you and under you, and they are all so effusive about your captaincy and about what you bring to the group as a captain. What would you say that you bring? How do you define your captaincy?
As a captain from the outside, you're always going to be defined on your results, and that's the black and white of it. I always see captaincy as another way to try and lend yourself to the team, to try and make players better, to be there to take pressure away from any pressure situations, to be there to encourage them to have absolute clarity and thought in what they're trying to do, and give them full confidence and backing to try and achieve what they do. and tying that in with a common theme goal that will hopefully get guys driving in the right direction.
And so if you look at, I mean, you know, it's clearly we've talked about this before, that, you know, your batting form is not where you would want it to be at this current moment. But do you think that you contribute enough from a captaincy point of view to make up from any lack of runs that you're scoring at this particular time?
Here, I've been through a low run of form before, and I've always put the team before any personal performance or captain's achievement, like I have done in the past. And I think that's still the same case. You know, probably the last 2.5 years I've probably peaked, or I'm peaking as a captain. I feel like I'm offering a lot. I feel like I'm as calm as ever, making really good decisions and getting things as right as I possibly could be. I suppose since 2019, when we won the 50 over World Cup, it's given me a lot of confidence in making plays during the game and trying to make changes that I think are right, and make them work when you can. So in that regard, I think I'm on top of my game. And I think probably most recently, having taken an IPL franchise as captain to the final after being dead and buried, I think is another compliment to my captaincy, even though my run of form hasn't exactly been contributing like I would have liked. But obviously history suggests, the amount of cricket that I've played, that I've always managed to come out the other side of it. And I always take confidence in that. And I always believe in that, because I wouldn't be in this position if I didn't manage to come out of a run of form.
For you, looking back on what you achieved in 2019, how much would it mean to you to hold both of those white ball World Cup trophies at the same time?
Yeah, I think it'll mean a lot to everybody. It's not been done before. Within this group, we've always spoken about set our own standards, our own level of intensity when we operate. And it's not new for us to break new ground. And it doesn't feel uncomfortable to try and set targets like we have been doing. I think it's nice that it's not another 4 years after this one that we have another chance at a T20 World Cup. You know, there's another T20 World Cup in a year's time, which means a very similar group will be playing in the same tournament. So if we can go really well in this, obviously it builds confidence and expectation moving forward. But there's certainly no reason that we see that we can't do well. There's obviously challenges between our first game against the West Indies and the rest of the group stage. I mean, there's some of the experiences I've been through. I mean, even when we won back in 2010 in the West Indies, we were, I suppose, a hair's breadth away from being bundled out in the group stages, and we went on to win the tournament. Similar instance in 2016. But I think, you know, some of the hardest cricket you play is in the group stage of a World Cup, and then the latter stage is almost to relieve any pressure or perceived pressure that is there, to try and go out and express yourself and play well.
And just finally, would you say that, you know, because you sound like your hunger for the game is as great as it ever was, and there'll be another T20 World Cup next year, and then there'll be another 50 over World Cup after that. So do you think you have got another 2 tournaments at least in you?
I'm not sure about another 2 tournaments. I certainly see myself this time next year playing hopefully a really strong role in another T20 World Cup. That's the expectation I've put on myself. Obviously, results determine how well you do and how often you're kept on. But certainly my hunger and determination is as strong as ever.
Alex Hartley, Carlos Brathwaite are with me, and we're looking ahead to England's first game in the T20 World Cup on Saturday against the West Indies. But let's reflect a bit on that interview with Eoin Morgan. And Carlos, I don't know what you think about the big debate about Eoin Morgan's lack of batting form at the moment. Is he a brilliant enough captain to make up for any lack of runs?
Once the team is performing, I think captain is only as good as a team. And if you look at 2016, with our World Cup run, Sammy bowled probably twice in the whole tournament and probably got 1 wicket, and then he didn't get much runs. I don't think he passed 10, but he's a fantastic leader, and I think captaincy is just an extension of leadership, and it seems as though Owen Morgan is a fantastic leader as well, and that drips down into his captaincy. So if he has players around him who are performing, and his poor performances are amplified because the team is losing, then yes, you can carry him. Because the tournaments are so tight, if you get 2 games in and he hasn't gotten a score and the team is losing, you then look to the IPL performances and you say he's struggling. You look to the first 2 games, so the team is struggling, and then there'll be a little bit more pressure on him to either perform or to be dropped. So is a catch-22, because you can have a guy come in and get a 30 or a 40, but then who steps into the leadership role? I played under Joss Butler for a couple of games and enjoyed the way he captained as well. Seemed very relaxed, seemed very laid back, similar to what I've heard about Owen Morgan's captaincy. So hopefully there's a natural transition from one leader to the other, and the team wouldn't miss much, either emotionally or tactically. But from the sense of Owen Morgan himself, he'll definitely want to get a score in one of the first 2 games, or the pressure will come a lot thicker and a lot harder on him and his personal performances.
Yeah, Alex, I find it quite calming just listening to him talk, and you get the impression that goes to the rest of the team as well.
Yeah, and what I really like about Owen Morgan is his honesty. He's like, I'm not in good form. He's like, but look at what I've done for this team. Look at everything that we've achieved over the last few years. Yes, I've taken an IPL team that were dead and buried to the IPL final, and he's not performed in that competition, but he's led that team. The way he captains, he's calm, he's cool, he's collected. And I think just the way he leads England, he is the best white ball captain in the world. So I do think there is still a place for him in that starting 11. And he agrees that, but I just love how honest he is about it as well.
Absolutely, he's not making any excuses, is he, for his lack of batting form at the moment? But he clearly backs himself to be able to score some runs at some point. He's thinking, well, it's that old thing, isn't it? Form is temporary, class is permanent.
Exactly, and you don't play cricket for England if you're not good enough, and he's played for years and years and years, and he's only one good day away from being back in form again.
Do you think that it is there for him, Carlos, that he could get that form back again? I suppose, as you said, it depends on having the players around who are going to score the runs, that actually in the end it won't matter that much, particularly in T20 cricket, because it's so short.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is why a team, and I will go as far to say a squad, is so important. If you get a good camaraderie, which he has been the focal point of building over the past number of years, and you find a formula to win, more often than not, you can carry 1 or 2 players who aren't performing to the best ability. And then when you get that sense of camaraderie, as I mentioned, and you find a way to win and you believe you can win from any position, all of a sudden, when the others that are on form fail, then you get the guy that needs that score or needs a big performance. You could easily find England 30 for 3, 30 for 4 in the power play, and Owen Morgan getting some time to come out and bat some balls, probably chew up 10, 15 balls, and then go on to get 60 or 40 balls, and then you say Owen Morgan is back, and Alex says, he won good score away. So I think because of what he has built, he's bought himself the whole IPL, as we see how that went for Kolkata. He's bought himself this World Cup, in my eyes. Some fans are calling for his head, but in my eyes, he's done enough for this team to create enough match winners around him that even if he performs or not, he's their leader.
I never want to ask any sports person, Alex, when they're going to retire, because I think it's a bit disrespectful.
Yeah, don't be asking me that just yet.
No, I wasn't going to ask you that at all. But I kind of slightly hinted at it with Owen, because I said to him, have you got 2 more tournaments left in you? And he said, maybe 1 more. So what are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always something around the corner, isn't there? And everyone looks at their career and goes, when is the right time to go? And there never is a right time. But there's always a world tournament around the corner. But for Owen Morgan, the next world tournament is so close. And I think if he went at the end of this tournament, he'd go, well, actually, I'm still good enough to be playing. I'm still the best white ball captain in the world. So 1 more tournament and then I'll reflect on where I'm at. But from what he suggested to you, he's definitely got 1 more, and you'll see from there.
Well, let's talk about Saturday's game then, shall we? Because some interesting stuff from David Willey in the last 24 hours from within the England camp, saying that in an attempt to replicate the dewy conditions that England are facing. They've been dunking balls in buckets of water to practice catching, fielding, bowling with wet balls. And actually, I was listening earlier on to the brand new podcast, Good Pace for Radio, with Mark Wood and Tamal Mills, and they were saying that it is so hot out there at the moment that their hands are wet the whole time because it's so sweaty. Can you give us an insight, Carlos, into what it's like to play when it's that hot, that humid?
I have the perfect insight of what not to do, Ellie. T20 debut in Bangladesh, and you could hear the tiger roar from the crowd. I'm always hot and sweaty. Alex can vouch for that. I don't even use the small towel because that gets too sweaty to dry the ball, and it actually wets it even more. But yeah, similar humid conditions, and the ball felt like a bar of soap in my hand. And I wanted to bowl Yorkers, but I just could not trust myself to try to bowl a Yorker and potentially bowl one over the batsman's head. And just kept going length and just kept getting smoked, and did it again. And after 20-something runs out the over and the game being lost, I learned a very valuable lesson about the dew and bowling with the dew. So, yeah, what not to do in a situation is exactly that.
So what do you do? What is the right thing to do?
But yeah, you have had situations in the past where you do not dunk it, because if you dunk it, the water's on the surface, but leave the ball in the water for a period of time so it can actually soak up and absorb a bit of water. So when you wipe it, you still want some seeping through. The best thing you can do, to be honest, is a bit of gamesmanship. You want to get around the umpire, keep drying the ball, keep proving it's unfit for play, is unsafe.
Yeah.
Bowlers are going to be thing, and then they try to get that ball changed twice in 20 overs. So you want that in the 16th over, the ball is being changed, and your bowler's now got 4 overs with a dry ball. That's the best thing you can do.
Good tactics.
Don't tell the umpires this is what you're thinking. Alex, what about you?
I hope no umpires are listening.
Have you had that experience, Alex, playing overseas?
Yeah, it's one of those experiences where you actually walk outside in somewhere that's humid and you just sweat straight away, and your clothes are just damp from the off, and you just have to get used to playing with wet clothes, wet hands. And if you're a seam bowler, some seam bowlers wear sweatbands to try not and get the ball even wetter than it is. But it's something that is hard to get used to, but you get used to it quite quickly, and you just have to keep having your hydration tabs to make sure you're getting enough fluids. If you're a batter and you get really hot, you get a towel in the freezer to make sure that you can cool down straight away when you get out, or if there's a drinks break. And it's just little tactics like that you just have to learn as you go and figure out what works for you. And if you need a towel or two in your back pocket when you're bowling, then make sure you have one.
And for a spinner as well, having a ball that's a bar of soap, I mean, yeah, that's the difference between getting smoked, as Carlos says, or not. It's
always a case of trying to rub your hands in the dirt to dry your hands as well, and try and get the ball as dry as possible. But I'm a typical always asking the umpire, look, is it too wet? Can we change it? And I'm literally asking all the time because I just want a dry cricket ball.
Well, we will see whether the dunking the ball or soaking the ball in water, as you said, soak rather than dunk, works out when it comes to Saturday. So what team will they play, do we think, England? I mean, Moeen Ali, let's talk about him first of all. He won the IPL, of course. He scored 37 not out in the final, 43 not out off 20 balls in the warm-up match against India. He sounds, Carlos, like he's in good form at the moment, Moeen.
Yeah, the only thing I see with Moeen is because of how stacked England's batting order is. You feel as though he will be pushed up and he will be pushed down the order. I found my outlook on his success with CSK was his responsibility, or the responsibility that they've given him. They said, you're a top order player, you're going to bat 3. They even pushed Suresh Raina down the order, who's a franchise player, and with all due respect to him. And Moeen Ali was tasked with being a batter. If you put him in the situation where he bats in the last 2 overs today, tomorrow he bats the new ball, the next day he's at 4 or 5, is a little less clarity, and you can muddle his thinking. You want to give him a clear role. I'd even go as far to say bat him at 4 and Morgan down the order, put less pressure, less strain on his batting and allow him to go and bat the last few overs and hopefully find form in one of the games that he can close out a 20 off 9. So I would like to see Moeen Ali given a clear, definitive role and give him some responsibility with the bat. He's the most informed player at the moment.
I think for Moeen Ali as well, but he's in incredible form. But what is his role for England? What does he do that, like Carlos has just said, where's he batting? Because if he's batting at 6 or 7, he's not being able to have enough time at the crease to be as effective as he has been. So I'm with Carlos. If he's playing, he's got to bat in the top 5 and push Eoin Morgan down a little bit further because he's in incredible form.
And as far as David Malan is concerned, so, still number 1 T20 batter in the world, as far as we can see. But he seems to be the man, Alex, whose place is constantly under threat or constantly being talked about. Yeah,
there's always one player in every team, isn't there, that everybody questions if they're good enough to be there or not. And poor David Malan, it seems to be him in this England side, and the fact that he goes too slowly and, he plays more of an anchor role. But I think why he's so successful is because England have got a lot of power hitting. They've got a lot of aggressive batters, whereas he goes out and he's happy at going at 100 strike rate and everyone else sort of bats around him.
The spin options that England and West Indies have, Carlos, they don't seem to have, they've not really kind of loaded up with spin, have they, in the way that other teams have? Is that the right way? I mean, because, as you say, we're talking about Moeen, he could well be called upon to bowl his overs.
Yeah, they're quality spinners in their own right, but they're not spinners that you look at and you instantly become terrified. They're not a Rashid Khan, a Mujib. So you always kind of think you have to see which spinner turns up on the day, who gets the ball to come out and flight nicely and go through the gate, or which one gets stomped all around the park. So I think that matchup, especially with West Indies not being the best players of spin, would be interesting. I think that matchup could swerve the game in either favour.
Is this going to be a spinning tournament, Alex, for you?
Yeah, without a doubt, especially having seen the cricket that's been played out in Dubai over the last few months. I think the wickets will get slower, older. They'll start to grip as the tournament goes on, and spin in T20 cricket now plays such a crucial role in that middle period. And if you can have a mystery spinner in your side that really causes headaches and questions for the opposition, then I think you've got a real advantage.
So the West Indies, Carlos, they are defending champions, of course, but comprehensively beaten by Pakistan and then Afghanistan in their warm-up fixtures. Are you a little bit worried because they've got such unbelievable experience, the West Indies? But are they limping into this a little bit?
Yeah, you're hoping for a CSK type turnaround from one season to the next, because they've kind of struggled all summer as well. Back home, as soon as the pitches got slow and South Africa brought spin on, they struggled, and then they saw it in the first couple of games. Not a lot of players going into the tournament with form out of the IPL as well, so that will be a worry. But you're just hoping that the experience can shine through, and they have similar problems with the top order as well. Where does Chris Gayle bat? Does Chris Gayle start? Who opens? So a lot of questions to be answered, and there are very similar questions to the ones being asked about England. So
West Indies, if they win this competition, it'd be the third time they've done so. They have got an unbelievable lineup of experience. As we've said, Pollard, 568 matches, Bravo, 507, Gale, 448. More matches in T20 internationals or in T20s rather than anyone else in T20 history. And Dre Russell has a mere 382 as well. So, Alex, can they keep on doing it, do you think? I mean, it seems incredible that Chris Gayle, for one, is still there. I know, it's incredible, but he's still such a good player, isn't he? He can clear the ropes. He's just a big hitter of the ball. I think while these players are still performing, yes, they can do it. And when you're playing against teams with so much experience like this, teams will fear playing against them, because you go, well, do you remember when they did this and this? Do you remember when, DJ Bravo has now taken the most wickets or played the most games for CSK? And it's all these questions then start popping into your mind as players. So the West Indies, they've got a really good chance because they've got youth and experience, and I think that's really key. Apart from the players we know about, Carlos, who are going to be the stars of this West Indies team potentially?
Obed McCoy. Strangely enough, I first met him going to West Indies Player Awards, and he couldn't find and get on his flight properly, and my wife helped him, and she was like, "Oh, he's so sweet, such a gentleman." And then we connected ever since, and his career has just shot up. He'll be in demand for sure around the world. But when you talk about Dwayne Bravo, you see the effect that his slow ball has had on world cricket T20 wise. Obed McCoy is as good, or will be as good. He's a lot taller, a lot quicker, so he has a few more strings to his bow. He's left-handed, and he's just a joy to watch. Very, very clever, and I know he's worked very hard to come back from injury, and I'm just excited to see him go and show off on the world stage. So if there's one person you had to pick out outside of the experienced guys, it would be Obed McCoy.
We heard Eoin Morgan talking about how much has changed in T20 cricket since the last final 5.5 years ago. In some respects, you could say, Alex, that for West Indies, not much has changed at all.
Well, no, it hasn't. I suppose that you look at their team and they've got a big core group of players that played in that, that final 5.5 years ago. But that's a good place to be in, because you can talk about, well, we won that. We're champions. We are the T20 World Cup champions, and let's go out there and defend our title.
And could this be the last time that we actually see them all together? And I'm guessing that for Kieran Pollard as well, for him to prove, because he missed the last tournament, Carlos, didn't he, when you went on and did your thing? But for him to be able to say, right, OK, I want to have one last hurrah with this group of players around me. I mean, that's some big motivation. Yeah,
and Polly's still young. Well, I think he's my age, so he's hoping that I'm still young. So no, he'll want to go on, and he'll be a linchpin, that a bridge between Chris Gayle, Bravo, and then the Purans and the Hetmeyers. And his story about the last World Cup, he got asked to come in and replace Fletcher. And Sammy said, look, Lendo Simmons is batting very well at the moment, and he probably is better placed than I am to go on and perform. And Lendo Simmons came off the plane and got 80 odd in the semi-final. So for that selfless act alone 5 years ago, he deserves a real good shot at potential silverware as skipper. So I love for him to lead the team all the way.
And the way I mentioned that T20 cricket has changed an awful lot in 5.5 years, Alex, from what you've seen of it, what do you think the key things are, the key things that are different from 2016? I
think just T20 cricket has changed so much in 5.5 years, just the way players go about their batting innings. The likes of Liam Livingstone for England just goes out, and he describes himself as not a batter, just a hitter. And I think there are hitters around the world now that just go out and try and slog from the off, and it works for them. And I think that's where T20 cricket has changed the most, because you've got genuine hitters of the ball whose role is just to score as many runs as you can, as quick as you can.
No route back for Joe Root, is there really?
No, unless he's going to play the sort of role that Dawid Malan is. But while Malan's the number one T20 player in the world, you can't just swap him out for Joe Root.